recording, and hopefully it'll pick up not just my audio, but if anybody else is speaking, your audio, or my music, or whatever's in the background. Now, getting back into the agenda, I would kind of like to go back a little bit about what we've worked on since last week. So, I've done a couple of updates in the PenguinSwap repo. I'm going to go over there real quick. I mean, it's nothing too crazy, but some of you may have noticed that, for example, the proposal for UP3 doesn't show correctly on PenguinSwap, and that was actually an issue in the Uniswap interface that was recently fixed, and so I had to incorporate that in. Let me pull my pull requests up. So we did some UP3 related improvements. Basically, one of the PRs was to allow overriding proposals in the UI, so you can describe the proposal outside of the Web3. It's just kind of built into the website itself. And another one was to make the vote page more responsive, and I published those today. They were based on stuff that other developers did for the Uniswap interface, and that's what's cool is we can kind of grab code from there as it gets improved. As well, some of you guys probably saw that we did the LID and ADI V2 kind of update for PenguinSwap not so long ago, and that's a great segue into our partnership with LID. I'm going to hide my screen really quick while I pull up some information from our private chat. Some of it's confidential. So one moment here while I pull some of this up. Just kind of show some of the marketing graphics that they're working on. And LID has been really great as far as partners go. They've got a lot of great ideas for marketing Penguin Party and marketing PenguinSwap, and kind of trying to drive their users to use PenguinSwap. So I think that that's really great for us. So let me see here. I'm just going to post this right into the Discord channel. And this was one that I really liked. I'll go ahead and swap myself back over to my presentation mode. So this was one I really liked. It's kind of an instructional for how to wrap Uni into shrimp. And it's really simple, but I love the graphics of it. I love that they used our background and then kind of threw the LID logo into the bottom right. It looks very clean and professional, and I like that about the LID team. They seem very professional, and like they're very taking our partnership seriously. And so I think that we want to collaborate with them as much as possible and try and reinforce these partnerships we have with LID, and maybe try and join them in marketing LID and their products, as much as they're kind of reciprocating with us to market Penguin Party's products. As well, I think we should examine Metagame. We should examine DFOHub. We should examine some of these other projects in this area and look for strategic partnerships. That's part of what's going to drive Penguin Party forward, and it's what's going to bring more developers into this project and make them more interested in what we're doing. I strongly think that. Yes, and Psychonaut brings up that Metagame just launched their phase 1 version of their interface, and it's really cool. I think that everything Metagame is doing is really cool, it's really fun, and it's philosophically based. It's not just there to make money, but to try and make a change in the world. And I think that that's more valuable than anything, right? That they actually care about doing something meaningful. Yes, as Psychonaut said, they are very nerdy but very cool. They are really cool guys. I enjoyed their presentation at BUIDLerberg yesterday. It was awesome. And I had a great time speaking at BUIDLerberg and watching these other presentations. There were a lot of cool ones. In terms of some of these other updates for PenguinSwap that may have gotten kind of missed, this was 27 days ago, right? The SOX update, the 0x Bitcoin, and the Metagame update. I think that some of the development has slowed down a little bit on PenguinSwap because we're trying to manage multiple things at once. I'm trying to develop these changes to the Uniswap router that will allow us to get swap fees from every swap that's occurring. And I think that kind of combined with increasing the user base of PenguinSwap is going to help drive the project forward and return value to Fish. And this is a great point to kind of jump right back to the presentation I had open. And I kind of talked about some of the lessons that I've learned at BUIDLerberg about developing software and some of the things I've learned running Penguin Party. And I would say that one of the most important things that I've learned is that developing software is about way more than programming. Developing software requires that you guys, the end users, know about it in the first place, and that you use it in the second place, and really kind of thirdly, and it's really the least important of the three things, the developers contribute to it. So software really needs people that know about it, are using it, and are developing it, in kind of that order of importance. Contributing to the organization of a community is as valuable and labor-intensive, if not more, than developing the actual software. There are a lot of ways to look at this, but what I essentially mean is not only does software have to be developed, it has to be marketed, it has to be tested, and it has to be modeled and analytically examined. Like the unit testing that we is doing, we need to examine this software that we're developing. And I'm good at developing software, but I think that people that can do more testing or that can help us organize the community more, that's really valuable to me because it's going to free me up to develop the software, develop PenguinSwap, and to be thinking about the big picture ideas instead of trying to manage all of the details about our marketing or keeping up with the news and those sort of things. I would say one of the other important lessons I think I've learned so far is that other people don't always see the vision. You have to make it real. And what I mean by that is probably part of what's confusing to people about the software that I have been building. Understandably, I think that it can be confusing when I just release something and people weren't expecting it. I didn't really talk about it too much beforehand. And the reason why is because of this lesson. So several times throughout this project, I would introduce an idea like PenguinSwap, which seems really normal to us now that it's been built, right? But the other developers like Ccomp or Inciatron at the time that I developed it, they didn't understand why I would want to develop it or what the relevance to Penguin Party was. I learned really quickly that explaining the same idea over and over again or debating the semantics of it with people doesn't work. Instead, as an inventor or an innovator, an artist or a developer, what works is demonstrating the idea by BUIDling the minimum viable product before trying to explain the concept to end users or other developers. I think that that's really important. It was one of the most important lessons I learned was that we need to develop it and build it before you guys can have an opinion on what it means, whether or not you like it, if it works correctly for you. when it's just something that's theoretical, it doesn't make sense to people. They can't play with it and use it. So I think that has a lot to do with my development methodology and why you kind of see, the release of these products without a lot of announcement. Because I've figured out that if I talk about it forever, it never really gets built. So that's what I'm trying to keep doing in terms of Fish, is to keep building these products on top of Fish and Penguin Party and just kind of keep stacking it up, where one thing interacts with the other thing. We have PenguinSwap, and then we have our tokens on PenguinSwap. So PenguinSwap's given us these preferred routing between the tokens, and then kind of going further from that, right? Then you get something like Tori or Commonwealth protocol, where then the tokens could be swapped outside of PenguinSwap, kind of through this contract. And then, right, we're kind of adding in this router, so we're collecting the swap fees. Plus, we're getting fees on transfers of these tokens that are in the liquidity pools. Plus, we're getting interest from the ADI that's held in the Tori V1 contract. I think that the combination of these kind of different things is what's going to give us the revenue we need to grow and to keep growing through good times and bad times. And I think that admittedly, some of the last couple of weeks have been a little bit rough in terms of the price. They've been a little bit rough, I think, psychologically for the project ever since Ccomp left. I still don't really know why he left. I've messaged him about it. I think that as a startup founder, this is my first time as a startup founder, this is kind of an important lesson for me to learn about managing people, about having to deal with multiple people, and not letting these accounts, like the Codex account, be in the control of somebody like that. And really, some of these things need to stop being in my control, and I need to start finding a way, probably as a DFO, to put the control into the fish holders' hands, where it's not all me that is trying to string these protocols together, or is the owner of the contracts, that sort of thing. And so I think that over the next couple weeks, that's something I'm going to focus on, is getting a actual DAO or DFO kind of deployed, experimenting with it some more to kind of figure out a good transition from our current governance structure to that kind of on-chain code-based governance structure. I think the snapshot space is going to continue to be used because it's gasless. It's really easy to use for you guys. And we'll try and use that for directing like our votes on Uniswap or on Compound, or making what I would like to call spiritual proposals, right? Like that are more idea based than actual mathematical proposals that are like allocating some to money or things like that. Those are things that will happen on chain through more like a DFO, decentralized organization that's based on computer code, where that way, as much as I'm sure you guys trust me or like me, you don't have to trust me. You can just trust the computer code. That's going to be superior, and that will make Penguin Party something that survives me and doesn't need me to keep it alive. And so that's a huge part of my interest, is how can we make Penguin Party unstoppable and uncensorable, because some of the things that personally I propose politically are radical. They're not they're the kind of things that these governments, these central bankers, they're not going to like hearing that the age of the central banker is over, and they're not going to like hearing that we're making tools that exclude them. We don't need them anymore. These governments and these bankers in these fiat currencies are definitely fighting a war with us. And so I think we need to keep our minds on that and realize that Human systems, as great as they are, we've had a very human system all the way through Penguin Party, are fallible. And when we just entrust a developer like Ccomp to, hold his couple thousand fish, the chances are more likely that at some point he'll probably dump it. And I think that that was an important lesson for me to learn, that the amounts that were given to the initial founders, I think, were a little bit off. It doesn't matter much now that they're already gone, but I think that, that was an important lesson for me, was that maybe it was a little bit too much trust to place in some of these people, like Ccomp, that they would act in the best interest of everybody, and they didn't. So we need trustless, decentralized systems, is my point. I don't mean to ramble on forever about it, but I'm passionate about it, and we should be passionate about it. I think what we're doing is exciting, and it's going to change the world, and it's going to make the world a better place. I think that as well, I touched on something of importance to you guys, and that is the fish cycle. So I was doing some deep thinking about it, and I realized that a governance token of a decentralized organization should flow out of the treasury to people who are actively contributing, not just people developing software, of course, but you guys that are running the missions to write content or spread the word about Penguin Party, those sort of things. We need to be doing more of that. But as well, the fish need to flow back into the treasury. It creates a virtuous cycle and incentive alignment when that happens. It naturally balances the economy of the token, and we need to be taking our revenue and using it to do basically a buyback. We should be buying back fish to return value to you guys. We've had this decline in the price of fish from around $2 to like 60 something cents, and for me that makes me feel like I understand that it was partially based on Ccomp dumping his fish, and I think that it was partially psychological, that we had this bull run of ETH, and there's kind of a variety of factors. But my point is, it makes me feel like that there is something more I could be doing to establish value for you guys, that it's not something you're losing money on to be in the liquidity pools, or losing money on, or you feel like there's not enough volume in the liquidity pools. And so I think that there is something that fundamentally needs to change a little bit for the investor confidence to come back, and for the price to come back, and for more developers to join the project. And so that's going to be another focus of mine, is over this next week, I want to be able to come back to you guys and have more of a plan of like how we're going to execute this buyback and turn this cycle of the fish into that, where it's rotating through. The fish are coming out to the people developing, and them selling their fish isn't going to hurt the price, but it flows back kind of through this cycle. I think I need to do some more research on what exactly is going to make that happen. I would say that the first thing we need, though, is more revenue, and so that's why I'm working on the router. I think that something as simple as a 0.2% fee, like I think that's kind of a magic number, on every swap, is something that we could easily be saving people more than that amount of money by getting them the best trade. And then that way we're kind of charging a fee for the service of making their trading options better. I think that I need to do a little bit more research in this area too, of how much on average is saved by extending the preferred routing algorithm. How much is a reasonable fee? I think that the base Uniswap protocol fee is going to be 0.05%, and that might be a number to experiment with as well. And so I think it becomes an issue of how many users do we have, and how often are they swapping, and is it actually the best trading tool. I'm pretty convinced from some of the missions that we've done previously that it is a superior trading tool. It is finding you better trades than the default Uniswap interface. And so as we refine that, I think that it's not going to be unreasonable for us to charge a fee for that service. And then we can build these kind of exclusive features for the fish holders, like the fishnet idea, or maybe access to kind of lending and borrowing capabilities, and those sorts of things. As well, I think that the amount of liquidity that has left the liquidity pools on Uniswap is something to discuss. I think that the reason most of the community has kind of backed away from the liquidity pools is because the liquidity mining program is ending today. I need to get a hold of Dewey so that we can do the final payment over to the liquidity pool, the Fish ETH liquidity pool. But this makes me strongly believe that you guys want a staking program. I have the Uniswap staking factory, and I'm going to pull that up really quick just to demonstrate it. It's a pretty simple contract. Here it is. And one moment, my IDE usually takes a moment to pop up here. And of course, I saw you pop in, Kansu. You're definitely welcome anytime to unmute yourself so that I'm not all alone in talking. Pardon me. Okay, here we go. So this thing is super duper simple. Basically, if I can scroll down just a little bit here. Oh, just a little bit further. Here we go. So the staking rewards contract is really super simple. It takes a rewards distribution, a rewards token, a staking token, and an amount of time. Basically, with this contract, we could have it such that you deposit a liquidity pool token, like fish to ETH, or fish to shrimp, and then we allocate a amount of fish into the contract, and it distributes it to the stakers over a period of time. Just like the liquidity mining program in Uniswap, it's the exact same contract, and we left that kind of liquidity mining page in PenguinSwap. It can pretty easily be pointed at this contract, and we could set up staking, like traditional staking, instead of this kind of injection directly into the liquidity pool. If that's something of interest to you guys. I thought I had a notification there, but it doesn't seem that I really do. And so I'm going to be playing with the staking factory a little bit over the next week as well. I'll write some of this down, but basically we want to finish up the router. We want to finish up the unit testing. We have some partnership stuff with LID coming up. And we want to explain some of these products a little bit better, like, you know, shrimp and crab, and kind of tie things together a little bit more. I think that once we get some of these ideas out, like the router, that will start tying it together and make it make more sense. And then as we kind of move into this partnership with Lid, they're going to help us do some of this explaining. They're going to help us do some of this messaging to reach their community about what it is we're doing, what these tokens like shrimp and fish and crab are. So that's really valuable for us. Yeah, and Matt commented, that's a cool idea. Yeah, I think that I would have liked some of these things that I'm working on to have gotten fleshed out a little bit more already. But I didn't predict that C-Comp would leave. I didn't predict that Inciatron would kind of become more inactive. He's still there. He hasn't left the project, but he's kind of been inactive for a while. He hasn't really come in for the meetings or anything like that. And I know that he's probably very busy, and that has a lot to do with it. But irrespective of that, I figured we would have been a little bit further along by now, and so I kind of have been juggling these things myself, and that's taken more of my time than I expected to. And as well, I've been spending a lot of time kind of trying to follow the price and watch these trades, and do kind of an analysis on the liquidity pools pretty consistently to make sure that they're operating correctly. A lot of the inspiration for PenguinSwap was that DFOHub had this problem with the kind of ARB bots. And so watching these ARB bots this entire time has been really important to me, and making sure that they are healthy for the sets of liquidity pools. And if you watch the liquidity pools when somebody makes a large trade of fish, it's really interesting to watch, to see the variety of tokens that are kind of immediately ARB'd. And from all of my math and what I've been looking at, it looks like it's generating value for the liquidity pools. What you have mostly is this kind of impermanent loss, as early holders have dumped the fish down to 64 cents. I think that has made it harder to kind of track the performance of the liquidity pools, because we've had this very large growth from 0 cents to almost $3.50, and then kind of back down to where we are now of 64 cents. So it's these liquidity pools were created at different points, and I have a lot of them. I have a lot of them. So tracking their performance when the price of the token itself is very dynamic is kind of difficult to do. And so I spend a lot of time actually just doing this, just ensuring that this kind of economy of tokens is functioning correctly. And let's see here, I was just checking to make sure you guys didn't have anything you were wanting to say. I saw that Chris Monkins here said that parallel processing saves users costs by reducing slippage, eliminating front running, eliminating risk from faulty smart contracts, and unintended consequences. I can agree with that 100%. And I guess I go back to the presentation just a little bit. And here was, I did a little bit of a write-up about what our various tokens are for the audience that may not, be very familiar. And these ones are pretty basic, but it explains what fish, shrimp, and crab are. And this next one kind of explains what Tori V1 is and what the Commonwealth protocol is. And I thought that the Commonwealth protocol description was pretty well written on my behalf. And I described it as a deflationary meta stablecoin protocol that allows multiple V1 and V2A tokens, as well as other stablecoins and cryptos, to be freely wrapped and unwrapped into each other with zero slippage. And then I kind of explained to them that there are various plans to integrate a variety of tokens kind of into that standard. And I should have Commonwealth, assuming that our unit testing, me and Dwee's unit testing goes well over the next couple days, we should have Commonwealth V3 done within the next couple days. It should be done, today's Monday, it should be done by Wednesday or Thursday. That's what I'm aiming for. For the users, for you guys that already have V2 Commonwealth, I really apologize about the mathematical error that I made in calculating the interest. It basically just meant that you guys got more interest than was intended due to the way that I kind of wrote this mathematical function. And you're gonna keep that. What I'm gonna do is use the admin functions to burn the V2 tokens and then mint you V3 tokens that you will get more V3 tokens than you had of the V2. I'm going to take the interest scale and multiply it by your supply of the V2 tokens and send those back out to you guys. So functionally, there will be no action required on your part. The old tokens will disappear from your wallet and the new tokens will show up in your wallet. It should be really simple. And like I said, I apologize that there was that issue in V2. The first thing that I did is I became a meme and I reached in, I withdrew the fish from the contract. That's most of what it had, just to prevent any kind of shenanigans with the bug that was in the contract, to, as it were, make sure that the funds were safe. So that was my goal, was to make sure that the funds were seifu. It wasn't an extreme amount of money. I think it was about 1,000 fish. I could look at the exact transaction. It was about 1,050 fish or so. But that was the main chunk of it, and I just wanted to prevent it from getting withdrawn at all. I did leave a liquidity pool up for fish to Tori V2. If any of you absolutely needed access to the to some kind of capital from your Tori V2, you could of course swap it through there, but of course you don't have to do that. I just didn't want to remove the option for you guys to be unfair in any way, because when it comes to things like these tokens, you have independent needs that somebody like me, I can't predict it. So I wanted to find something that worked while at least leaving some kind of option there. But yeah, you guys are just going to get the V3 tokens. That's the way that it should work. You just get the V3 tokens and you don't have to do anything. And that should be good. Get that squared away and taken care of. And it looks like Chris Monkins is typing. I would love to hear anybody's thoughts or questions about, anything that's happened in the last week. I see that Kansu unmuted himself. Are you there, Kansu? Oh, I'm not hearing you, Kansu. Or Dave. Do I have everybody muted? What happened? Yes, I'm not hearing either of you. That's a little bit odd. Hold on one second.
Quiet. I don't know.
So loud and
Nope, there we go. I fixed it. I feel so dumb. I didn't know if you guys were talking this whole time.
What's up? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine, Dave. What's up?
Oh, sweet. Hey, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. Just having this meeting. actually ran for the full hour. Apparently, I'm getting good at keeping
Nice.
at running the meeting up to the full hour. I was
Nice. Yeah. I just showed up like 5 minutes ago. I was like, finished my other meeting. I was like, see what's up. Catch the tail end here.
No, yeah, it's perfect. This week I was actually only planning to speak for about 30 minutes, but somehow I got off into rambling on forever, and so that's what I've done.
So much for keeping your time target, huh?
Yes, right. But yeah, do you guys have any questions about things that have been happening in the last week, or anything I talked about at all? Now that I can hear you all.
So I was working on writing up something about just explaining the Commonwealth, and like I guess I was explaining Tory V2. Is Tory V3 like very it's like similar and also related to Commonwealth? I know Commonwealth is like new for V2 than V1, but I don't know. I mean, did I miss like a explanation of V3 earlier?
No, not really. V3 is just an update for V2. There was a critical flaw in V2 in the way that interest was calculated. And so the interest was accruing at much faster than 2% annually. And so I'm
Where was that interest being generated?
um,
The extra interest?
so basically it was calculating this interest scale, which if you're wrapping into the Commonwealth token, right, you're going to get less of the Commonwealth tokens for your dollars as the interest goes up. If that makes
Yeah.
sense to you.
Yeah.
Um,
But that interest comes from those things, transfers, ADI.
right.
Yes.
Right.
And so
Well,
you're saying,
and if the interest, to some degree, if the interest is accruing faster for the users of Commonwealth V2 because of the way it was designed, then it falls on basically me to make sure that it's solvent. I have plenty of money to do that, especially with.
oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It
So the actual Commonwealth didn't have what it was calculated to have. It had less.
Right, and
Yeah.
so there's been changes to the mathematical model for the wrap and unwrap fees. So it still has zero slippage. We're still accomplishing that goal of making it have zero slippage, but now it charges a fee on wrapping and a fee on unwrapping, and so you can't just deposit and then instantly like pull out more, right? If you do that, you're going to pay this fee, and so that makes it such that if a die is 98 cents and regular die is $1.02, and somebody comes in and arbs it, then there's a profit for the protocol. Um,
Mhm.
Whereas in V2, there wasn't necessarily really this profit for the protocol because there was no unwrap fee. There was just this wrap fee, and then the wrap fee is kind of being sent out of the contract. In V3, instead, you have half of the fee that gets sent out of the contract into an address controlled by Penguin Party. The other half is staying in the contract as a fee for the users, just like the Uniswap liquidity pools, the way that they function. So
Okay.
it just sends you slightly less, and it keeps that in the contract. And so that makes sure that the protocol is going to continue to kind of grow as people are wrapping and unwrapping. And then the
Cool.
interest is accruing in it. And then as well, kind of as you pointed out, you have the Tory V1 feeding interest into it, and then you have kind of these fees on the transfers of the token that are also
Mhm.
feeding into it. And as we upgrade PenguinSwap with our own router, we're going to have a fee on every swap, and it's as well going to be kind of going into this Penguin Party Commonwealth program or liquidity mining programs. It's going to be used for kind of these same things. And so I think the combination of all of those factors is revenue generation for the group, for everybody. And the way that we'll probably try to distribute that value is as a buyback of fish. So
Yeah.
the
I
reason,
like that.
yeah, the reason we want to do a buyback of fish instead of a dividend, which everybody loves dividends, but they don't really work on Ethereum. And one of the reasons why is because you create a taxable event every single time
Yes.
you distribute a dividend, and it instantly, whoever you've sent this dividend to, they owe taxes. Whereas if you just buy back the fish, it makes the fish more valuable, but it didn't create a taxable event, and the taxable event's not created until that person sells their fish or withdraws their liquidity pool. Tax guidance is not exactly very specific about stuff like liquidity pools yet. That's a little bit gray area for taxes, but the dividends are definitely clear as far as taxes go. So I think that the proper way to distribute that value back to you guys from all of PenguinSwap and kind of these revenues is through buybacks of fish. And then we can use those fish to pay developers, and it creates a kind of cycle of the fish. You'd almost imagine it like the fish are swimming upstream, and then they swim back downstream. I like to think of it in kind of cute ways like that. You know, it's fish.
Yeah.
They're trying to circulate.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think some of you guys have come in a little bit here towards the end. I saw Reem just came in. And Reem, we're approaching a little bit towards the end of the meeting. Since you're just coming in, did you have any questions you wanted answered, Reem? I ask because he's very active in the community.
Oh, well, while he's typing that up real quick, I'll just say, I think the idea of just avoiding taxable events, taking regulation into mind, it's really important, especially American people in the space, because we have such unclear laws. The regulation doesn't exist. We have to kind of force its hand, I think. And the idea of like a protocol politician, I think, is really interesting and kind of like stopgap between maybe the I don't know how to say real politician, but you know, who manages the laws of the state, that's going to actually change the tax code, that's actually going to pass regulation for like new organizations that are decentralized. So it's really cool, like, to kind of see the politician in the Ethereum space to like, or whatever, to move towards, you know, the dialogue with actual, I don't want to keep saying real politician, right, or actual politician, because I think it's all kind of semantics anyway, but you know, to like push towards actual regulation changes. The idea of taking into mind taxable events is an important thing, because I do think a lot of people in the space are like coming from different areas and different laws and different types of jurisdictions that they don't always maybe consider these, or like they always just want to circumvent them to avoid the problem. And I think it's better to just like embrace the idea of regulation in the future.
Yeah.
Try and work within it.
I agree with that really strongly, Kansu. Like, especially like you're saying, as an American, we're in this very precarious situation as Americans, that we live under a government that can be very strict about some of these things while still being, you know, free market and kind of very liberal about, you know, our government has kind of told us that it's okay that we're experimenting with these protocols and these governance tokens. It took them long enough, right? It took them like 10 years. But I think it's a precursor to what you're talking about, which is that at some point we've got to grow up and we're going to get regulated. And the question is, what are we going to get out of it? And what are they going to get out of it? So what we have to get out of it is that the central banks die and that the people get the right to good money back. That's the core of our revolution. If we get that, and at the end of this revolution, then we won. And what they obviously want is to be able to tax us. That's all they care about. As long as they're getting the taxes, the American government really doesn't care about the central bankers, as far as I can see it. They're not. You would think actually that they would be more interested in preserving, you know, the dollar as a world reserve currency, but actually the American government doesn't really seem like it cares about Bitcoin that much anymore. I think they were threatened by it in the beginning, but At this point, they've just accepted it as another asset. You know, they're ready to move on and just turn it into an industry. I think.
It feels like that just happened too. Like, I mean, it's been happening for a decade plus, but well, not quite a decade, but we've been working towards this. But in the last, 6 months, shit really got real.
Yeah.
And especially with like Bitcoin. I mean, and it has to start with the Bitcoin, I guess, because that's where the money's at right now.
Yeah,
Not
it's
people
the
know.
Coca-Cola. Everybody knows Bitcoin.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, like it's already kind of this thing where I'm already hearing about like older people I know asking me about it again. What is this Bitcoin thing going on? So like the normie talk is kind of, it's good because it's a bad sign for maybe markets in like a short term whenever your uncle or whoever starts asking you about what Bitcoin is, but it's a good sign because things are different than 2017 as far as the maturity of and a lot of the players that are getting involved are like, the big bankers, the big credit card companies, the people that have the most weight in the space to either destroy or face. So
Yeah.
we'll see some real, like, I think a lot of, especially American policy, I think we'll see a lot of action and actually clarification in the next year. And that's just become a real possibility, especially because of post-election and what the world looks like.
Post-election, what the world looks like is right. And I touched really strongly on that at the BUIDLerberg conference yesterday. And I think that you're exactly right. I think that, the fiat money system and the central banking system has turned into a bubble. And it's obvious to, I think, everybody watching that the bubble is about to collapse. The bubble is about to pop. Whether that's in 2009, it was the housing market and the mortgage-backed securities that caused the bubble to pop. That was the bubble, was these mortgage-backed securities, and they were taking these bad loans and packaging them in with good loans, and then nobody could tell what they were buying because they were buying whole packages of loans, like, put together as these, like, weird equity securities. And it was all bad, right? It collapsed, and it caused a lot of economic hardship throughout America for years. I think that the fiat money systems are the same way. This year, they lowered the reserve rate of the banks at the Federal Reserve to 0%. The bank is required to hold exactly $0 of every dollar you deposit. And that's insane. That's
Worse than Tether.
Yeah, that's worse than Tether. It's insane.
Yeah.
Tether's like something.
Tether at least says they have it.
Not 1-to-1, but it's like we got a lot of money in some islands stashed away, but probably not as much as the Tethers. We got some. I'm sure they've got some money. The SEC will find it, or whoever.
The SEC will find it. Yeah, I think with things like that, the danger is that one or two people will find it in their pockets, and it'll turn into an international manhunt to figure out who has it.
I got a couple points here that I guess I don't want to sound too doom and gloomy, but my first one is I agree that there's this sentiment, like the looming collapse. There's just too much going on as far as like this unsustainable growth rate of the market economy leading up to, for instance, the U.S. presidential election, and how well markets are performing despite the actual economic conditions that people face every day are super bad. People are unemployed at a high rate. People are, broke. People are hurting right now. And then the economy is just, the like market economy, the NASDAQ, the Dow, it's blowing up.
Tesla's doing great.
So it doesn't make sense. Like one of these shoes is gonna drop.
The shoe that's gonna drop is the Federal Reserve at some point has to dump the stocks that it repoed onto the balance sheet, and when that happens, we'll see the true valuation of these companies again. And the true valuation of a lot of these companies is going to approximate zero. Because a lot of these companies are broke. They borrowed the maximum amount that they could borrow, and now, for example, in China, in terms of international politics, in China right now, they're having a debt crisis. Basically, they're having a wave of defaults. As one guy defaults to this bank, now this bank can't pay its loans, and so it defaults over to this guy, and then that guy runs a factory or manages multiple different corporations. He defaults, he's bankrupt, everybody's bankrupt, right? You get this wave of defaults because one guy couldn't pay another, then you kind of get these multiple people that are all defaulting on their debts. And that's what's happening in China right now, and it's going to happen here. And it's especially going to happen in Europe if they close all the borders for every country, right? I don't want to get too deeply into politics, but I touched on all of these topics at BUIDLerberg yesterday, that I don't think these governments really have the right to destroy our businesses. The function of government is not to dictate what customers you're allowed to serve or what times your business is allowed to be open. That's never been a function of government, and I just don't believe that they have the right to do that. If I want to open my restaurant or open my skating rink or whatever, I don't understand how the government can forcibly close these businesses without offering them any kind of compensation. It's literally like suiciding the small businesses of the world, like not just America, but this is a worldwide phenomenon, and it's really dangerous, and it's really scary. I think a lot of people are afraid, like legitimately afraid, and I don't think we should be. I think that there's a lot to be excited about. I think at the end of this thing, we're going to wake up with new jobs, we're going to be running new businesses, and we're going to have new kinds of industry. And I think something you touched on, Kansu, we're not going to have these infinite growth paradigms in the new economy. They don't work. The earth is finite. It has a limited amount of resources, and we cannot continue to extract the resources of the planet at an infinite growth rate. It can't happen. It's not possible. So I think that there's nothing to be afraid of. We're about to go, explore space. We're about to colonize the moon and Mars. Project Artemis, on an unrelated to Penguin Party, topic. NASA of the United States is running Project Artemis, and that is our next generation lunar mission to build a human sustained presence on the moon. So NASA's committing to landing American astronauts, including the first woman and the next man, on the moon by 2024. And they want to use, quote unquote, innovative new technologies to explore more of the moon than ever before. And then we will use what we learn on and around the moon to take the next giant leap, which is sending astronauts to Mars. And so basically, if you read all about this, they want to create an orbital outpost and a actual base on the moon, which sounds crazy, but I think that these type of things are what we're like right on the cusp of, and I think that it's stuff to be excited about. The things are gonna get better. This situation we're in right now with these lockdowns, the virus, these corporations and these small business closures, protesting, political violence, all of those things are really scary to be in. And this has been one of the weirdest years of my life, but it's going to get better. And we need people to tell us it's going to get better before we believe it and before we achieve it. So I think that that's extremely important to drive home to people, is that you're free. No government can really tell you what to do. And when the people make a decision, the government will step out of the way, because the people are powerful. The government will listen to the people, whether that's in communist China or it's in America. The question is, are enough people going to stand up at the same time to make their voice heard? And that's all just my opinion, and that's kind of how I feel about it. I think I am a politician, so it makes sense for me to outline what I believe politically. But, it's kind of a grim topic. on the subject of Penguin Party, I think that we've had a lot of success so far in demonstrating some of these concepts. I think that Up 3 looks like it's going to pass spectacularly. If you go to uniswap.exchange and you go to the voting section, I think that the last check I did of the vote had like 40 million votes. It had some excessive amount of votes. It was pretty crazy. I'm pulling that up right now. It's interesting that you joined us on cam, Dave. It's nice not to be the only guy on cam.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just wanted to say hi, you know.
It's cool.
I just got out of a lab meeting, and like it's the same thing. Like, you know, no one has their cam on except for like the meeting leader, and I was like turn mine on. So.
Are you in school right now?
Yeah.
Awesome. What are you studying?
Nanoscience engineering and computer science, like DNA nanotech. Yeah.
Smart guys. I got this sweet political science degree. I thought, like, all right, I'm contributing to this politics discussion.
Well, I'm staying out of the politics discussion because I just know about science and very little about politics.
This is the space that brings us together, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There was one of these presentations at BUIDLerberg. The presenter was like, "We need more political scientists." I was like, "No one ever has said that. I've never heard that." I got a poli-sci degree like 10 years
That's
ago.
awesome.
I've never heard that.
Do you know which conference
Except for the
it was?
Starbucks, right?
What's that?
Oh no, I was saying people hiring at Starbucks say that, but.
Oh yeah.
I was asking which conference it was.
Oh, this guy that's talking about the DWeb search engine. I'm on it. Near the end of the second day today. It's interesting. We got really into the weeds about like who actually controls the server side of Web3 and, you know, how to prevent, you know, like the data capture that took place on Web2 and the kinds of people that are trying to take over that space already. I don't know. It's interesting because we all use IPFS and, well, actually more. Even broader than that, we all like rely the shit on Infura or whoever.
I was about to bring that up. Yes.
No, let's just say they decided that like, they wanted to tweak things like a percentage or two. I don't know. There's a million things they could do, but the power that those companies have is actually pretty palatable, and it's also a concern for the like ethos of decentralization.
Well, and when you have access to all of the transactions in the transaction queue, then you can front run everybody, right? And I have long suspected, and I'm not pointing fingers at Infura, but I've long suspected that somebody at Infura could be using like that RPC node to like front run everybody. It would actually be relatively simple to do. Of course, you don't need control of the RPC node to look at the transaction pool and front run everybody. But it definitely gives you a latency advantage if you're the guy that all the transactions are being submitted to. So I relate to that really strongly that for a while I've been looking at our dependence on Infura and kind of asking myself, like, why aren't there like multiple RPC providers? There should be more, for sure. I think that that's a weakness in the network. Like when Infura goes offline, nobody can do anything, right? Almost nobody knows where a secondary RPC node is.
Well, what happened like a couple weeks ago? They were just out of sync, and so half Ethereum was on some other block, and the other half was on whatever Infura was on. So Etherscan was just shitting its pants, and I'm pretty sure, it just basically shut down an international economy. If you can think of Ethereum as like its own economy, well, actually, I mean, it's interrelated to a ton of other economies too. So they probably just shut down systematically like a ton of operations just by having their nodes out of sync because we over rely on one entity to cater all that. So
yeah,
was that when there was like that update? There was like some.
Yeah,
it was like a fork. It was like a fork technically, but like
They accidentally created a fork because they forgot to update Geth. And then when they did update Geth, there was like a strong enough difference between the two versions that it caused a fork. And then, yeah, like they forgot to update their version of Geth, and then like when they did update it, like that fork was like still existent. Like other miners like kept it going, and so then like you get this confusion of like which network are you supposed to be on. Just to be official, the meetings run for like an hour and 15 minutes. So at this point, we're just pretty casually hanging out. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording here and just kind of let us keep talking or whatever. But for the people that feel like they got to stick around for the whole meeting, I would say that most of the official meeting is probably concluded. At this point, we're just kind of chit chatting.